nights grow long, we come together under these lights. A team, united by purpose. Fans bound by passion. Each holding a small flicker of hope in their hands. At SportsGrid, we believe that even the darkest nights can't dim the unity we share. One team, one stadium, one shining moment. This holiday season, we shine brighter together. Happy Hanukkah from all of us at SportsGrid.
There's a lot of bowl games. I love all of them. Even if you don't like bowl games, you got to love the Pop-Tarts Bowl and what it means for college football.
Who doesn't get excited for Pop-Tarts? But also, this is one of those where, Ben, I guess you could put your kids through college. Miami doesn't care about bowl games. They don't ever win those. Miami's a favorite, so you easily go take the Iowa State Cyclones. Miami doesn't play any defense whatsoever, so you automatically just bang the total.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
I don't like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhardt and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
You basically predicted this, saying that if Texas, as expected, as nearly a 2-touchdown favorite, did beat Clemson, the odds were telling you they were only 10 cents behind Oregon entering the opening round.
I still feel that Oregon's one of the best teams in the country. You want to give me now from plus 350 to plus 480? I think it's great value. I think they match up very well against Ohio State.
College football today. Only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Happy Friday to all of you. We've got a huge college football week ahead of us, some pro football to determine a couple of playoff spots and some seedings as well. We also have Sam McQuillan on the show today, and we'll get into some pro, of course, bull riding here, back-to-back days with that here on the show as the big event coming up this weekend at Madison Square Garden. So stay with us here at SportsGrid as we get you ready for the big weekend ahead and naturally recapping everything that happened in sports yesterday. Some big NBA news, I guess you could say. And also we finally have determined the Final Four in college football. I guess the only issue is the Final Four football teams are not the first 4 seeds in the college football playoffs. So will they fix this thing or just keep it going? Who knows? Either way, Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, they are headed to play in the Orange Bowl next Thursday night against Penn State. That 1-day delay to the game didn't seem like it factored in at all to this one. 23-10 the final. Georgia couldn't get anything going with their backup quarterback offensively. A big fumble in this game was really the key to it. And Notre Dame carried on the strength of their defense and decent quarterback play, as you would say, from Riley Leonard has got them now 1 game away from a national championship. They will have to do it in South Florida, where it should be a very compelling game on Thursday night against Penn State. Here's Marcus Freeman, the head coach of the Irish, talking about the accomplishment of getting there.
I think I said this after the game, but I'm so proud of this program, the team, for the work they put into obtaining the result that we got tonight. I would remind them the last 10 days as we prepared, this will be a 60-plus minute fight. Georgia's been down in 9 games this year, and they find a way to come back and win. And so they had that mentality. Our coaches called the game aggressive. Our players executed, put everything on the line for this university and this football team, and I'm really proud of them. Proud of the way they handled, the events of the last 24 hours. And I want to make sure I, again, send our condolences on behalf of our university and our football program to everyone that was affected by the tragedy. And, they had to be able to still get ready for this game with the natural emotions that come into each individual that happened after the tragedy. And so I'm proud of the way they prepared. They stayed steady, and they went out and they did a great job. And so
Meanwhile, Georgia's season comes to an end with a whimper. Kirby Smart, after the game, giving all the credit to Notre Dame.
A lot of credit to Notre Dame and their staff and their team. They played exactly like we expected them to play. Physical, tough, don't beat yourself. And they did that. They did those exact things, right? They got 2 turnovers, and we didn't, and they returned a kickoff for a touchdown. So we basically spotted them, probably 14 points off of that, and costed ourselves a possession in the red area when we fumbled down there. But, they did a really good job. They play really hard, physical, ran the football. So do we. Those two mirror each other. I think both defenses played well, and we turned the ball over, and they didn't. And they gave us problems in the pass game with the sack and the sack fumble. So give them a lot of credit. That takes nothing away from these men on the stage and the seniors that are part of this class. I mean, absolutely incredible. I just told them what they went through this year and what they played and how they played, the resiliency, the injuries that we've had, and to win an SEC championship, which I have so much respect for our conference, and to win some of the comeback games they won and never quit, even in this game, never quit. That's the attitude you got to have to get better as a football program. So we got a lot of guys moving on, a lot of guys hurt in that locker room because, we didn't get the outcome we wanted. But that's part of life, and I give Notre Dame credit for how they played and give our seniors and our leaders credit for what they've done for this program.
Georgia still expected to be ranked in the top 5 going into next year as well. Meanwhile, where will Alabama be ranked? They'll be looking for a new quarterback, either internally or through the transfer portal, as Jalen Milroe makes his intentions known. He's headed to the NFL draft, making a statement yesterday that he is leaving the Crimson Tide. Football has always been my passion since I was a kid, dreaming of competing at the highest level. Also said that he's very happy for the opportunity in the sport, and at the end said he is declaring for the NFL draft. There's a lot of difference of opinion on where and when Milroe will be drafted. Most draft prognosticators have Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward as the top 2 quarterbacks taken in the upcoming draft. But look, who knows? I mean, you know how quarterback inflation works. Maybe Milroe ends up being drafted right ahead of them, but he will be a first-day pick in the upcoming NFL draft. Meanwhile, Cliff Kingsbury's had a lot of success with quarterbacks in the past, and he could potentially become a head coach once again in the NFL. He's done a fantastic job with Jaden Daniels in Washington, and his name is now in the coaching circle again. But this time around, Kingsbury said he'd like to return, but in a careful situation.
Do you want to be a head coach again?
Yeah, I'm sure at some point. Yeah, at some point.
Do you plan to interview for jobs this year?
I won't comment on that, but yeah, we'll see how everything plays out. But I'm very happy here. Yeah, this has been an awesome place, and has really helped me kind of rekindle my love for the sport.
And last one, but what did you learn from your first stint, and what would you be looking for?
Yeah, I think the first one, I didn't know what I didn't know, really. Coming from college, I had bounced around on teams as a player, but not as a coach on any level. And so to come in there, I don't think I set the foundation the way I would do it after watching DQ and how he set the foundation from day one. And it was, these are the standards. This is what we won't compromise. This is what we're going to be. I definitely could have done a better job of that. And kind of once you don't lay it out like that, it's hard to put it back in. It's hard to kind of reset it. And I think that's where he's done such a great job. It's like, this is what we're going to be from day one. There was no ifs, ands, or buts. And the guys bought in, and, he's led in an incredible way.
Back to some other NFL news. The Jets are interviewing Mike Vrabel for their head coaching position. Louis Riddick has interviewed for the GM position. And also the Browns announced they're starting Bailey Zappi at quarterback. The Ravens are 20-point favorites going into that game. Also another bowl yesterday, in case you missed it, wasn't much of one. Ole Miss crushes Duke in the Gator Bowl, 52-20. Jackson Dart threw for 4 touchdowns and 400 yards. Louisville's punter, Brady Hodges, said he opted out of the Sun Bowl because he didn't get the NIL money he was supposed to get. How about that? Also, Indiana quarterback Curtis Rourke played the 2024 season on a torn ACL. He's going to have surgery. He'll be fine going into next year. Couple of college bowl games today as we get ready to close out bowl season. Texas State, 13.5-point favorites against North Texas. And then later tonight on the Mayo Bowl, we've got Minnesota taking on Virginia Tech. In the NBA, the Miami Heat lost yesterday to the Indiana Pacers. That was not the story. Even though Tyrese Halliburton went off, so did Jimmy Butler. But in a different way, post-game, Jimmy Butler was asked about if he could be happy remaining with the Miami Heat for the remainder of the season.
Whether I score 9 points or 29 points, I will compete. That's one thing that I will say. So you won't say that I'm out there
not playing hard. It may look like that because my usage is down and I don't shoot the ball a lot, but we won't sit here and say that I don't play hard.
What will fix it? What do you want to see happen to fix it?
What do I want to see happen? I want to see me get my joy back from playing basketball. And wherever that may be, we'll find out here pretty soon. But I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhat dominant. I want to hoop. And I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
Certainly looks like the end is near for Butler and Miami, although Pat Riley said he wouldn't be traded. See what happens next. Jason Tatum, big night for the Celtics. They beat the Timberwolves 118-115. SGA last night, 29 points. Thunder win their 13th in a row. It wasn't close. They beat the Clippers by more than 20, and Steph Curry 8 for 8 from 3. Warriors beat the 76ers final 139-105. Real quick, let's go to college basketball. 32-point margin of victory, largest ever by any team in a road game against an AP top 10. That's Illinois going on the road and beating Oregon 109-77. Gonzaga wins by 31 over Portland. Purdue crushes past Minnesota 81-61. Braden Smith had 20 points in that game. Full slate of games in the National Football League to preview. We'll do it next with Matt Lutovsky of Sporting News after the break.
They let the guy run the practice and leave the building, have a press conference, and then you fire him on a cell phone call while he's in the car. Shame on you, Sacramento. You haven't been good since Chris Webber, White Chocolate, Lottie Divac, Corliss Big Nasty Williamson, and obviously Rick Alleman as a coach. No one wonder why you've been a joke for the last quarter century.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Road management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Matt Lutovsky is with us, and he's, of course, with Sporting News. It's Happy New Year time, Matt. Good to see you back here on the show as we get ready to close out the rest of the regular season in the National Football League. And, you know, Matt, it's a different sort of week 18 or even week 17, as we would say, in the NFL, where usually we have a lot of drama going into the last week. I don't know, maybe we will get that, but it doesn't really seem, Matt, like there's a ton at stake. Some seeding stuff, you know, the last AFC spot potentially on the line here, but not as much drama, I think, as the NFL would like. And so that's why they had to put that Vikings-Lions game, I guess, on Sunday night. But both of those teams are getting in the playoffs, clearly.
Yes, and both of those teams are going to be among
the favorites. I think I heard this is the most combined wins we've ever had going into an NFL game. It's certainly crazy that it's going to come down to this for 14-2 teams. Most of the time, they're safely locked into their spot. They're resting their starters. They're planning ahead, in some cases, to the divisional round of the playoffs, but not this week. And it should be a great game. You know, these two teams played earlier in the year. It was one of the better games of the year where it went right down to the wire. The Lions managed to sneak it out. These teams are a little different from when they met in that game. The Lions defense is certainly a lot more banged up. I would say that the Vikings just in general are a better team with more confidence. At the very least, the outside public has more confidence in them. They probably had it all along. But it seems like just last week a switch flipped where people like us go, the Vikings might be a real Super Bowl contender. Yeah, they're 13-2. They're 14-2. So they are. So this is going to be a fantastic game. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's tempting to sort of say, well, Detroit's at home. And we know Detroit's offense can score against anyone at any time. But I think if it's going to come down to which defense do you trust more, I don't know how anyone could have watched the game on Monday night, how anyone could have watched the game against the Bills the Lions played a couple weeks ago and come away thinking you can trust that Lions defense right now against a good offense like Minnesota's.
Yeah, no, it should be the best game of the week, but there's a lot of other games to play before then. And so the NFL smartly put one of the really key situations on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night because the Ravens will play and they will beat the Browns. I don't know by how much, but they will win that game. They're 20-point favorites. That's not happening. But I guess what the scenario becomes of after that is the real interesting mark here. The odds makers, Matt, have made the Bengals 1.5-point favorites. And I would assume that when the Ravens win, that number will rise even a little bit more because it will mean that the Steelers are not going to play for anything. But I kind of feel, oddly enough, that the number is sort of baked in here a lot, knowing that. I'm just not sure what Tomlin's goals are in this game. I would think, Matt, that he would want to win and not have to go to Baltimore next week and play Houston instead. But what do I know?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I think. When I looked at the number, I see Bengals -2. I find that a little bit confusing. I know they're playing really good ball. Joe Burrow's playing at an MVP level. Pittsburgh is sort of floundering a little bit based on how well they were playing earlier in the year. So I get all those things. It's not as if the Bengals can't win this game by any means. But like you said, I think the Steelers are going to play hard and the Steelers are going to try. Certainly they're going to start the game that way. Now, whether if at some point they're going to call off the dogs and say, okay, big deal. We know we're in the playoffs. We don't care if we're the 6 or the 7, what have you, or higher than that. But I don't think that's going to happen either. I think they're going all out the whole time. And I think we're just going to get a really good, really entertaining football game that either team can win. And given that the Steelers are at home, given that they have the better defense, I would side with them. And so this number where it's at would seem to favor, betting on the Steelers or going in on them. Like I said, it's no guarantee. They have not played that well lately. Russell Wilson and the offense just haven't looked as crisp. And whereas you have a Bengals team that is executing at a pretty high level, at least on offense. So I think we're in store for a very good game. And I understand why people think the Steelers might at some point during that game take their foot off the gas. But I haven't seen any indication that's what they actually plan to do.
Yeah, and I think that could happen if the game is out of reach and the Bengals are winning big. Yes, then that's the smart thing to do for Pittsburgh. But until then, no. Joe Burrow probably not going to win the MVP statistically, though he's right there. His passing yard prop, 284.5, 2.5 touchdowns to go over is plus money at 144, and anytime interception -128. I mean, to me, I guess, Matt, I look at it and think, my gosh, this guy throws 3 touchdowns every game. Why wouldn't he? And then I remember, oh, that's right. It's in Pittsburgh. I guess that's the one thing that I would probably have to say. I guess I wouldn't take plus 144, but I wouldn't go under that as well. But I think the passing yards is possible to go over.
Yeah, he's going to be throwing a lot. There's no getting around that. That ball's going to be in the air. He's got the kind of receivers who make plays after the catch, even on shorter passes. And that comes back to the running backs too, and pretty solid tight ends. So I think the ball's going to be in the air a lot. I think he's going to get the yards. The touchdowns comes down to can he convert in the red zone. That's tough. That's tough in Pittsburgh especially. So I don't think that one's quite as good of a take. But I like the yards.
Okay, so I've been watching Dolphins-Jets my entire life, Matt, living in South Florida, and what I can tell you that, yes, it does matter that Tua's probably not going to play and Tyler Huntley will, but I would tell you that it wouldn't matter anyway. You cannot predict the outcome late season when one team is playing for something and one team is not, between the Dolphins and Jets. I've seen this play out a million times. I was at the game that the Dolphins barely beat the Jets a few weeks ago with the Jets out of it. They needed overtime, and the Jets probably could have won this game. I'm not saying, Matt, the Jets are going to win this game, but this is an extraordinarily dangerous spot here. I have no opinion whatsoever. I could see it being 10-9. I could see the Dolphins winning 41-0. I could see the Jets winning 31-0. I have no idea what to make of this game.
Yeah, this game is scream stay away for a lot of different reasons. It just seems like that it's a perfect ending to the Jets season. To win a game they don't need to win, that would actually hurt them to win. Aaron Rodgers has a big game. He gets his 500 touchdown we've been waiting for a week and a half, however long he's been sitting on 499. And the Jets win this game. Their fans are actually mad they won this game. I don't know if Dolphins fans really care. And then we all just sort of go into the offseason and forget it happened. That just seems how this game is destined to end. But like you said, anything could happen in this game. I don't know if the Jets are playing hard. I don't know what's going on with them. And this just feels like a mess. I want nothing to do with this game.
Me too. Chiefs, you think they cover this big number? 10.5 points at Denver, total 39.5. I mean, Carson Wentz not going to throw 3 or 4 touchdowns in this game, but he could keep it close, right?
Absolutely. I mean, when we think of sitting starters, we think of young guys, inexperienced guys coming in. That isn't the case here. He did this in Week 18 last year for the Rams, had a big game, played really well. I think he can keep this one close at the very least, if not pull out the upset.
Yeah, that would be crazy. Plus 420 on the money line in that game when the Chiefs beat the Broncos. But then Miami would need to win to get in the playoffs. And if they lose, then it would be the Bengals. All right, whatever. Matt, have a great weekend.
They let the guy run the practice and leave the building, have a press conference, and then you fire him on a cell phone call while he's in the car. Shame on you, Sacramento. You haven't been good since Chris Webber, White Chocolate, Lottie Divac, Corliss Big Nasty Williamson, and obviously Rick Alleman as a coach. No one wonder why you've been a joke for the last quarter century.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching!
Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 PBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Time to get the latest in injuries in the NFL with Dr. Chow. Also a preview of the game of the week. We'll hear from the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, and a whole lot more. Time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. It is the game of the week in the NFL. It's the final regular season week of the NFL. So they stick this game on Sunday Night Football, and for good reason. The number one team in the NFC North will be crowned. Will it be the Lions, who are 2.5-point favorites, or will it be the Vikings, who have been disrespected, including by me, honestly, all season long? Here's our very own Joe Lisi with a preview of Sunday Night Football.
The stage is set for a dynamic NFC battle this coming Sunday night in Detroit. It's top-ranked Minnesota on the road to square off against the Detroit Lions. Detroit opened up as a 3.5-point home favorite, but already earlier in the week, we've seen Minnesota action. Now this line is down to 2.5. Last time these two teams played, Detroit eked out a 31-29 victory over the Vikings. Jahmyr Gibbs had a dynamic performance, rushing for over 100 yards and had 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 receiving. But Minnesota is one of the hottest teams in the NFL. They've won 9 straight. They dominated the Green Bay Packers last Sunday for much of 3 quarters, held a 27-10 third quarter lead before hanging on to win that ball game 27-25. Sam Darnold hitting on all cylinders. Justin Jefferson, 8 catches, 83 yards. This game is shaping up to be a dynamic game with playoff implications. Early on, you see the total 52.5. I'm going under. Now, Craig, back to you.
All right, we'll catch Joe this weekend. Lots of fun football action, especially in the National Football League Saturday and Sunday. Meanwhile, Kevin O'Connell, Coach of the Year candidate, done a fantastic job getting the Vikings to where they are. They are 1 win away from winning the division. And also, big shout out to Brian Flores, defensive coordinator. If they gave a coordinator award out, it would go to him. He's been fantastic. Just ask O'Connell himself.
Good afternoon. Happy New Year to everybody. Good to see everybody made it in today. I was questioning whether there'd be some attendance checks or not, but you guys proved me wrong. So good to see everybody, and we're well into our preparation to get ready for a big football game. So our guys are looking forward to it. I think the coolest part has been the subtle nuances and kind of evolution week to week. One of the things him and I talked about, even going back to when we first got together to talk about him coming here, was an identity of a team that can kind of morph into what we think week in and week out that can win football games, playing complementary, what it's going to take to win versus, the types of teams in all 3 phases that you play. And we've tried to have a mentality like that on offense where we do those things, but we never veer too far off the path of our identity of who we are. And I think he's the same way. And as a group of guys that to do it in a short amount of time with some new faces that he's done, I think that's coaching. I think that's teaching, and then empowering those guys to have ownership of the plan. They've got ownership on the field to make adjustments, and it's been really cool to watch.
Meanwhile, injury is always a big part of games like this. We know the Lions have suffered massive injuries on the defensive side. The Minnesota Vikings relatively healthy, but let's get the very latest with Dr. Chow on the medical report going into Sunday Night Football.
Big NFL finale as the Lions host the Vikings. Who is the healthier team? This is Dr. David Chow at Sports Injury Central. The Vikings are the underdog, but they are the healthier side. Their main issue is Aaron Jones with the quad contusion, and he undoubtedly will play through. They recently returned Stephon Gilmore and Ivan Pace from hamstring injuries. Detroit has a lot of issues, not just David Montgomery on the offensive side of the ball at running back. Khalif Raymond should be back, but 3 key defensive linemen are out, from Aiden Hutchinson to Alim McNeil to Kyle Pecco. And 2 of the linebackers are for sure out, Malcolm Rodriguez and Derek Barnes, although Alex Anzalone has a chance to come back from his forearm fracture. Carlton Davis is also out with a jaw injury. So all 3 levels of the Lions defense, and the 49ers were able to take advantage last week. Will the Vikings be able to take advantage this week? Go to sicscore.com for all the latest info. Craig, back to you.
All right, thanks you so much to Dr. Chow, sicscore.com. Also, the point spread in the game, as we told you earlier, 2.5 points. The Detroit Lions at home Sunday night. If they win the division. And look at that fat total, 56.5 going into this game on Sunday. Can't wait to catch it. All right, also can't wait to catch up with our next guest. Sam McQuillan joins us from Legal Sports Report. Be right back after this.
They let the guy run the practice and leave the building, have a press conference, and then you fire him on a cell phone call while he's in the car. Shame on you, Sacramento. You haven't been good since Chris Webber, White Chocolate, Vlade Divac, Corliss Big Nasty Williamson, and obviously Rick Alleman as a coach. No one wonder why you've been a joke for the last quarter century.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this one? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 PBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Our next guest is Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report here as we get a new year started with our friends over at LSR, LegalSportsReport.com. You can check out all of the columns over there, everything that we discuss on the show as well. Hey, Sam, Happy New Year. Thanks for coming back here on NewsWire. And kind of a time to review some things that happened in the year of sports betting. And certainly a good place to start with money, which is what we're always talking about here. And it appears as though a lot of records were broken in 2024.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you too, Craig. And it was a great year for the sports betting industry. Once again, as you had another record amount of total dollars bet, at LSR, we're projecting $150 billion, all legally bet at sportsbooks during the full year of 2024. That's according to data only from 33 states out of the 37 that report so far. So it might even be a much bigger total than that. Interestingly enough, 95% of that was online. We've kind of seen that move more and more as the years have gone on, as legal betting has spread. You have the shift away from retail sports books and the shift towards online where you can bet on your phone. And you see so many more states are embracing it now as well. And the total bet was a 23% increase from last year. But notably, the revenue that the operators keep after they pay out winning bets was up even more, 29% to $14.2 billion. So it shows that while more people are betting larger amounts, the operators are, increasing the pace at which they squeeze revenue out of players by an even higher count. 2.9 billion of that total was sent to state and local governments in the form of taxes. Now, it's still just a drop in the bucket compared to the total amount of taxes that a state might get in their budget, but it's not nothing, and it's a lot more than we really conceived of when the Supreme Court repealed PASPA and paved the way for states to legalize sports betting. So you see it's just continuing to grow. You have sportsbooks also taking a record 9.5% hold. That is essentially the money they keep after they pay out bets, their winning margin, so to speak. So the holds have gone up, as you've seen. Like we talk about a lot, but I'm going to say it again. Parlays are increasingly popular. These high margin bets for the sports books, they've really leaned into that this year as well. These things that people kind of look at as lottery tickets, where they can determine a game narrative in return for a big return, obviously has a small chance of hitting. So sports books have done a really good job profiting off that and pushing it on people. You have states like Nevada were surpassed by a couple others this year. They actually had a smaller hold than usual, and a lot of that is because they have limited props. limited parlay offerings, and more betting in person, maybe some sharper bettors in the state as well. You had New York overtake all of the states for most dollars bet ever. New York has only had legal betting for a few years, but it's already surpassed New Jersey, Nevada in terms of total amount bet, just showcasing that it's one of the biggest states that is able to squeeze a lot of money out of players. You have other states as well, like Illinois, making inroads. And on the business side, you have FanDuel and DraftKings accounting for 65% of all the dollars bet as they just continue to widen their lead against the rest of the competition. I think you have around 50 other or so small sports betting sites, bigger sports betting sites across the country. But FanDuel and DraftKings continue to dominate in that space. Looking forward to this year, you have possibly some new entrants, like Fanatics and ESPN Bet could make some inroads. Crypto.com and Robinhood, we've talked about, are interested in getting in betting as well. So we'll see if DraftKings and FanDuel continue what they did, but it was another great year for them in 2024 as betting overall was up across the board.
Yeah, no question. And that could go up if other states become legalized. Of course, we'll keep a close eye on California and Texas. But for today, Sam, let's focus on Oklahoma. I know a legislative session is coming up in February. They'd like to push things a little bit more forward. Naturally, I feel like Oklahoma and Texas are sort of intertwined. Whatever happens with one maybe happens with the other. But at least there's something in the works, although I know that there is cautious optimism. I guess that's the best way to put it right now.
Yeah, there are definitely different dynamics at play when you talk about the state legislatures and the stakeholders in Oklahoma and Texas. But you're right, Craig, anything that would happen to the smaller neighbor state in Oklahoma would probably be beneficial and a good selling point for Texas to legalize. Lawmakers could say, hey, they have it, so people are driving across the state. We're losing revenue. Oklahoma, one of those states which obviously has a lot of interest in professional sports. They have Oklahoma City Thunder, best team in the NBA. Their colleges as well, Oklahoma State, draw a lot of interest as well. So people have been clamoring for sports betting in Oklahoma for a while. You have some hope. A bill was filed just before the legislature took a break at the end of the year that would legalize sports betting in the state. Now, the big roadblock there has been whether or not you can get the Native American tribes on board and whether or not you can get them all on board together to make this happen. The tribes have essentially been at odds with the governor, who proposed a mechanism of legalizing sports betting a few years ago that would have excluded some tribes. And now you have this bill that was filed by Senator Dave Rader, which would essentially require that at least 4 tribes in the state all agree to offer sports betting, and then they enter contracts with online gaming companies like FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, or whomever, and then they would all have to agree to offer sports betting together, as opposed to a state like Florida, where there's a monopoly dominated by the Seminoles with Hard Rock, and you've obviously had other tribes have taken issue with that, filing lawsuits against it. So I wouldn't say that it's a great, clear path ahead, but it is promising that you now have this bill. The big question here will be whether or not the tribes and the governor can mend their relationships from a few years ago. So we'll see what develops. But, with only a few states left on the board to legalize, you could definitely throw Oklahoma in that ring of, next closest to this year.
Yeah, it would be a good story to follow, at least a good start, if one of the states would sort of get moving here a little bit. Maybe Oklahoma is that state this year. All right, online casino gaming, let's get into it here. I know that Illinois is a very big state for sports wagering, one of the top 5 in the country. I would guess, Sam, that anything moving forward in that realm would push them maybe even a little bit higher. But would it really count? It would count toward betting, I guess. It wouldn't count toward sports betting.
Yeah, Illinois is one of the biggest states in the country. It has a huge population, and it's done a tremendous job with the dollars bet, but it's expecting a $3 billion shortfall in its budget this year. So now lawmakers are kind of scrambling to see, hey, how can we fix that? How can we generate more tax revenue for the state? And Governor J.B. Pritzker, as he gets ready to propose his budget, it's being reported that he's open to legalizing online casino because of the tax revenue it might generate. So Illinois has generated $500 million in taxes just from sports betting in a few years. And it actually made headlines last year when it decided to up the tax rate that it charges on operators. You had some sports books like DraftKings respond saying, we're going to end up passing that tax down to bettors. That obviously didn't end up happening, but they've played around with this idea of getting more revenue for the state by increasing taxes. And sports betting is by no means this budget savior, but iGaming is a much higher margin business. The bill that was just filed is projected to raise about $800 million a year. And you compare that with only $200 million that Illinois got from sports betting this year, while it's still one of the biggest states. So it would be a much bigger, windfall for the budget than sports betting. Illinois would be the 8th state to have iGaming, joining those like New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So that would be just huge for the sports betting operators that are really clamoring to get iGaming moving and have really been kind of frustrated with a lack of momentum on that front. And if you have a big state like Illinois, leading the way, that's much more significant to kind of ushering the other big states and saying, hey, here's how much revenue they took. Maybe we could benefit from it as well. So it'll definitely be one we're watching this year, especially as the budget process develops. Illinois would be a huge, huge win for the iGaming industry.
All right, Sam, good stuff as always. Congrats, by the way, to your Nittany Lions playing in my backyard next week as they take on Notre Dame. It'll be a fun one as we get down to the Final Four in college football. We'll see what happens. Thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig. Go State.
All right, it's Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report here with us. Well, coming up next, a very special guest. We've got Mason Taylor, pro bull rider, to talk about the big event at Madison Square Garden coming up this weekend. If you want to learn more about all of the things we got going on here at SportsGrid, you can take out your phone, scan this QR code. It is the SportsGrid app available for both iOS and Android. The SportsGrid app for your phone. Download it now. We'll be right back after this. Don't go away.
They let the guy run the practice and leave the building, have a press conference, and then you fire him on a cell phone call while he's in the car. Shame on you, Sacramento. You haven't been good since Chris Webber, White Chocolate, Vlade Divac, Corliss Big Nasty Williamson, and obviously Rick Alleman as a coach. No one wonder why you've been a joke for the last quarter century.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Road management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 PBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Mike McDaniel, head coach of the Miami Dolphins, says Tua Tagovailoa unlikely to play this weekend against the Jets. I think we knew that already, but just a quick update coming from a press conference just a short time ago. All right, this weekend, great event over at Madison Square Garden. If you haven't heard, there's going to be some pro bull riding going on over there. We're going to have Mason Taylor on to give us a little bit of a preview. And if you are unfamiliar with him on the bull, you may want to get familiar with him. Here's a video.
I'm busted. Taylor busts out another big one.
The pep talk with Coop has definitely paid off, and he better hope that helmet didn't fly out of the arena. He's going to be paying somebody's medical bills. 91 and a half.
That was a great ride, and played in the Little League World Series on 2 different occasions as a catcher, so he's got a gun.
He's got an arm, but look at this. He's also got some skill.
That's a big ride. That's a tough bull away from your hand. If you do not understand how to ride away from your hand, guess what? Taylor does.
And guess what? That is a career best at this level. A new standard for himself. He earned every point.
All right, let's bring in Mason. Mason, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming into the studio here on SportsGrid. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, so Mason, let's start there with that video. Was that the highlight, would you say, of your pro bull riding career right there?
It's one of them for sure. That bull there, I'm busted. Nobody ever really hardly rode that bull. I was the first right-hander to ever ride that bull, and I think me and JRV and Keyshawn Whitehorse were the only guys to ever ride him. Like, there was only 3 of us in his whole career that, ended up staying on him. So it was one of my highlights for sure.
Yeah, so I guess we could go back to that. So right before they pull the door there, like, what are you thinking with such little information, knowing how, other riders have ridden that bull before?
Yeah, man, I was just trying to, stay calm and let my body react. That bull, he was such a tough bull that you really don't have a game plan going into it because, he doesn't have a set pattern. It was, one of the best rides I've ever made in my life, and one I'll remember, forever.
Now, Mason, I know in the video there, a couple of different points were made. I'll get to your baseball Little League here in a second. But what happened there? You threw it into the stands. You threw your helmet there into the stands. So, I mean, the announcers were trying to be funny there. Like, you're going to, no one's going to get hurt there. But did you end up getting that back? Like, did you have to trade some signed item to get your helmet back or something like that?
No, it didn't go into the stands. It hit right before the fence leaving the arena. But yeah, we use rosin on our gloves. And, it's kind of sticky. And, man, when I went to hum that thing, it kind of hung a little longer than it should have. So it got thrown pretty hard.
Yes. So would you do something like that again? Or would you say that was just not a moment of clarity where you're just enjoying
that was a that was a fired up moment to where, I look like a crazy person with the look on my face because, I'm all fired up and then I hum that thing. Yeah, it was just, spare the moment deal.
All right. Well, Mason, this weekend, a big event at Madison Square Garden. So let's get into it here a little bit. I know that the weather is not cooperating for you guys a little bit. I'm in Florida, so I know about hot weather. And I know anytime I go to New York, there's a little bit of a shock there for the cold. But, you guys will be indoors at MSG, so it won't be a huge, huge deal there. But tell me about this big event this weekend and why you're looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, this is one of the biggest events that we get to ride in all year. It's honestly probably the most exciting event other than our World Finals that we get to ride in because of just it being in MSG. That's such a historic arena. So many things have happened there. The fans, they get so fired up and crazy and yell and, holler. And if you would never know that they've never seen bull riding before, as loud as they're cheering and as much as they get into it, it's like they've been watching it since they were little kids. So, I mean, it just fires us all up.
Yeah, it should be a blast this weekend. And Mason, before we let you go, what are some of your goals here going into 2025? I mean, I think for people who are not familiar, Mason are you still 20? Are you 22 years old? Is that how old you are?
No, sir. I'm 25 now.
25 years old. So 25, you still have such a long way to go in your career. Sir. What are your career goals for the year?
Everybody has a goal that, at the end, they want to, eventually win a world title. But, this year I'm just focused on, taking it one bull at a time, and focused on being the best bull rider I can be. And whatever that brings to the table this year, I'm ready for it.
Well, we're very excited to have you here in the studio and really appreciate the time that you made to come up with us live here in our studios in Manhattan. At SportsGrid. Mason will be cheering you on this weekend. And hey, if it's one of your biggest moments again, I'm going to be watching the video very closely here and see what else you're going to throw, okay? careful out there.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, Mason Taylor here with us on the show. Pro bull riding event, one of the biggest ones coming up this weekend at Madison Square Garden. If you missed it last night in the National Basketball Association, the story wasn't the Miami Heat losing to the Indiana Pacers. It was the fact that ESPN is reporting that Jimmy Butler has requested a trade from the Miami Heat. He was asked about why he was not happy, basically saying that he could not find joy anymore on the court with the Miami Heat, but definitely is willing to accept a trade to any team in the National Basketball Association. I guess he just simply doesn't want to play in Miami anymore. All right, so what we will do is we'll take a quick time out here on NewsWire. When we come back next, it's time to dive into some last licks here on the show. I mean, sports cards have just become so popular. Who knew that even one of the most popular actresses is even into sports card as well? By the way, sports cards as well. Meanwhile, Verizon has opened up a brand new Super Bowl watch party all around the country. First of its kind. We'll tell you about that as well. And also dive into the latest from last night's game between Georgia and Notre Dame. You're watching NewsWire here on SportsGrid. And also don't remember, you can catch me back here tomorrow for our next edition of Fantasy Sports Today. That's 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern, exclusively here on SportsGrid. And also Sunday mornings, you can get Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker's advice right here on SportsGrid as well, leading you right up until the final regular season week of the NFL on Pro Football Today. We'll be right back to wrap it all up next.
They let the guy run the practice and leave the building, have a press conference, and then you fire him on a cell phone call while he's in the car. Shame on you, Sacramento. You haven't been good since Chris Webber, White Chocolate, Vlade Divac, Corliss Big Nasty Williamson, and obviously Rick Alleman as a coach. No one wonder why you've been a joke for the last quarter century.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Road management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What? How do you do this once? Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 PBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We got some fun programming coming up for you later. Lots of college basketball action. 2 college football bowl games coming your way later today. I'm sure we'll have full coverage on Pharrell Coast to Coast, 3 o'clock Eastern. But for now, let's dive back into last night's game between Georgia and Notre Dame. Also talk a little Super Bowl and pulling a one-of-one baseball card from an actress. Tell you more about that too. Time now for some last licks. We didn't hit on this story at all at the beginning of the show because I didn't want to feature this as a highlight, like the main thing to talk about. We saved it for the end here because I genuinely do feel bad. but it is a story, and we got to tell the story. There's a player on the University of Georgia named Parker Jones, a walk-on player who is being talked about a ton today and is going to have a really hard time on social media for the immediate future. Parker Jones yesterday was on the sideline while one of the players on Georgia was rushing toward the end zone and accidentally ran into one of the referees in the game. And Georgia had a penalty called on that for obstruction. Kirby Smart, the head coach, was asked about it. I mean, a little bit has been addressed on it. This kid, I am sure, is feeling it today. I genuinely feel so bad for this kid because, again, the last thing that he ever wanted to do was be discussed. A player who's a walk-on wasn't even in uniform for the game. But needless to say, you got to call it what it is. At least for now, he's going to be talked about. Now, did he have the impact on the game where it caused Georgia to lose? No way. They were not going to win anyway. But let's follow this situation as it goes. Maybe he'll get an NIL deal out of it, right? Like, I mean, maybe there's some funny moment to make out of this. But for now, a very tough scene. If I was him, got to shut down social media, got to shut down the phone, at least for the time being, until this subsides. All right, if you are not attending the Super Bowl in New Orleans, but you have an NFL team in your backyard, there's really good news for you. Verizon, for the first time ever, this is a really interesting idea, I got to say. Verizon is having a Super Bowl fan fest at a lot of the cities around the country where the Super Bowl is not played. So, for example, you could go to Houston or Tampa Bay or Miami at the stadiums where the NFL teams play, and they're holding a big party where there's food and there's tickets and you can meet legends and stuff like that. Really good idea for anybody who wants that sort of Super Bowl experience. It sort of reminds me of like the old days of closed circuit television where you had to go to a movie theater to watch something. In this case, of course, you could watch the Super Bowl at home. You could stream, it doesn't matter. But a Super Bowl party of a different kind where you actually get to go to the stadium where your NFL team plays. It is put together by Verizon. It's called Verizon Fan Fest at Super Bowl. So we'll see if it ends up working out. Maybe this is an event that will be had everywhere in the future. But I've looked at some of the legends' names. Some pretty good names going to be there as well. All right, finally, actress Emma Roberts. Who knew that Emma Roberts was a sports card collector? That is not Emma Roberts, I'm positive. That is Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles. But Emma Roberts, I guess, is a sports card fan. I mean, hard for me to not be a little cynical and think that this wasn't contrived, but apparently Emma Roberts is a sports card collector too. She pulled a 1-of-1 card of Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles, which of course is going to be worth a lot. I mean, what is a lot? Is it 5 figures? Is it 6 figures? I'm not really sure, but it is thousands of dollars. No question about that. And it just goes to show you that even people that you do not expect to be memorabilia collectors or even card collectors, sometimes they are just like us, indeed. All right, that will do it for the show today, folks. We've had a fun week of shows, and thanks for sticking with us all week long. I know we had a little break there for New Year's Day, but we move forward now with a very exciting week ahead where we're going to have college football semifinals in the first week of the NFL playoffs as well. But at 4 o'clock Eastern today, we've got games going on, so make sure you stay tuned to SportsGrid for all the coverage. In fact, the First Responder Bowl will be played 4 p.m. Eastern. And I know that this is a big point spread game, 13.5 Texas State. They opened up a little bit less than that. Total is very high too, 63.5. First game of the day, 4 o'clock Eastern, followed by Minnesota and Virginia Tech. And that game is tonight at 7:30 Eastern as well. I want to thank all of our guests here on the show today, including Mason Taylor. Thanks to Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report, as well as Matt Lutovsky from Sporting News. Also, thanks to our director, Luke, and for my producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. I'll see you back here Monday for our next edition of NewsWire. I hope you enjoy the weekend. If you want to catch fantasy sports today, don't forget, I'll be on 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern. A lot of daily fantasy discussion on tomorrow's show at 8 a.m. with me and George Kurtz, and also a little bit of a preview of what we can expect for the upcoming fantasy football drafts for 2025, which, believe it or not, will be in like 6 months from now. The way time flies is sort of insane. So happy New Year to you. Thanks for sticking with us for the week. I'll see you back here Monday for our next edition of NewsWire. See you then.